you need to have coding knowledge and you need to have knowledge of working with the database. And these are the two things that you need to start. Otherwise, it will be very difficult. For me, the key lesson was always to be curious, to try to learn something new. And the cool thing is, in this job, in this profession, you can do this on your own.
Welcome to Data and AI Talks. My name is Vincent Spruit, and today we're going to talk about the problems that a data engineer encounters in his daily life. If you're new to data engineering, you will learn what to expect, and if you already are a seasoned data engineer, you will probably recognize the problems that we will get into today. Hopefully, we will get you some new insights on how to solve them. If you'd like to see more of the content we're making, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. To get into the daily problems of data engineers, I have invited a, dare I say, celebrity data engineer in the data world, Andreas Kretz. Welcome, Andreas, and thank you for taking the time for us today.
Hi, Vincent. Great to be here.
Hey, I just thought to maybe give a little bit of an introduction about you. You worked as a data engineer in the Boss Group for about 10 years, and then in 2021, all of a sudden you decided to focus all your efforts on teaching other people data engineering. You're the founder of the Learn Data Engineering Academy, which already had over 1,000 students and have more than 122,000 followers on LinkedIn. With your daily content, you have now become a top voice in LinkedIn, which is for me like the dream and very impressive. Before I dive into the topic of today, I thought maybe to get to know you a little bit better and also to the listeners. And I prepared a few A-B questions for us to warm up with. So you're not allowed to give feedback. That is only at the end, only either one of the words. So I'm going to start. Specialist or generalist?
Specialist.
Front end or back end?
Back end.
Morning or evening?
Morning.
Azure or AWS?
AWS.
Book or film?
Film.
AI or human?
Human.
The last one was the only one who was a little bit tricky for you. Would you like to elaborate on any of them?
Well, the AI or human, of course, from a professional perspective, the AI topic is the important or the interesting topic, right? Because we as engineers, we're working with the data, we're preparing the data for the machine learning, for the whole AI topic. But it can be annoying to work with it a lot. So, human.
You think we will be completely replaced as... I read or you saw the video of the guy from NVIDIA, the CEO. He said, well, it's better to teach your children not to code, but to learn how to work with AI, because coding will not be something of the future. What do you think about that?
Yes and no. I think it will help us a lot, also as engineers. In the next few years, I don't think that it will be completely replacing us or making coding unnecessary, because there are so much around the creating of the code.
Yeah.
So the coding usually is only the small part. Can be tricky, it can run into problems, but the whole around it is actually the difficult part. And I also, why I answered human, because I don't know if you have seen that on social media and so on. There's so much AI content right now, right? You see it immediately. Okay, that's a ChatGPT thing. Okay.
It loses a little bit of authenticity. There's the same tone every time, and even though you can say speak in a different tone, it still doesn't really quite get it. And I think as a senior data engineer, or any job for that matter, you will work with AI, but you have to. The better you are, the better you can check it, and the better you can send it in a direction that you need it to be going in. But completely autonomous, that will take a while, probably.
Yeah. I always say, like, the simple things, the things that are chores, the things that, you know, like the accessing for the 20th time a database and make the connection to a database and stuff like that. Why not have an algorithm do that? Why not have AI to, like, okay, here's the address, connect me to it, and then it already generates you the template codes and so on.
So you've been in data engineering for a while now. Where does the love for data engineering come from?
For me, I started with classical computer science education. Right? I learned about relational databases, about first we started with C coding, C++, Java, and computer networking. And for me, it was always that the thing of, okay, let's solve some problems, let's build something. And basically through that, I came into contact with a project that I loved at the time. I was building a condition monitoring system for a machine sending in the data, and this gets processed and stored and visualized. And through that, I actually transitioned into that area of data engineering. Back then, it wasn't called data engineering.
What was your job name? Maybe BI consultant or ETL developer or something like that?
It was more a software developer, I think, back in the day.
So, and then the second interesting thing is you made a switch to being basically a teacher and to promote yourself online. How did that come to be?
It's very easy for me to remember this because it has there are two things. One is the birth of my first child, my daughter. That's where I figured out, okay, let's look at the future and how can you show what you know, what you can do, so that maybe in the future, if some opportunity arises, you can actually have a bit of a track record, right? Because usually when you work within a company, nobody knows what you can do. And so I started writing blog posts and everything. People liked it. And I know this because I have this actually on my YouTube channel, a video, my lessons from my first coaching session. That was in March 2020. So March 2020, I then decided, okay, I know a lot and people need that education. The job is needed a lot, and let's start coaching. And so on the side, I coached a few people. I liked it.
Well, we still have, in Netherlands at least, a big shortage of data engineers. And also I see a lot of companies asking for specific data engineers with Dutch knowledge. And that's something that has been going up since last year. So you don't fill that with international people. That's a really big problem right now. We're just not able to find experienced data engineers who know Dutch. And I'm pretty sure that in the German market, they have the similar challenge.
I don't know. I'm not that focused on the German market. I was looking at the statistics last week for my academy. I have students from 98 countries. So that's, for me,
cool.
Germany is only...
Wow. Yeah, it's just a small piece. Okay, so let's get into a little bit what you're teaching. How long does it take for somebody maybe completely new to data, or with somebody who already has a background in data, like a data analyst or data scientist, to actually learn data engineering?
So the thing is, as you already said, you have different starting points. Giving a number is always a bit difficult. What I can say is, first, you need to have coding knowledge and you need to have knowledge of working with the database. Basically SQL knowledge. How can you put data into a database and get data out of a relational database? Yeah. And these are the two things that you need to start. Otherwise, it will be very difficult. There's no number for it. Okay. That's a precondition that you need to have. And for people like software developers, database developers, or data analysts, usually I say 3 to 6 months. For analysts who might not have that much knowledge with coding, might be more on the 6 months. For software developers, can get into this very quickly. You only need to learn a few things, understand how to build a stream and batch pipelines, and work with a few different databases and so on. And then it's absolutely possible, 3 to 6 months.
Okay. So if companies are to look into where to find a new generation of data engineers, just focus on software developers and train them. That would be the fastest way. I guess most data engineers work with Python. If you work in any other job with Python, that definitely helps a lot, probably. Or do you think Python is very similar to it's easy to other languages?
Well, for me, I taught Python myself because I was coming from the Java world. And during my time at the job, I just used Java and I used Scala because I was working with Spark. It's not a big deal. If you know one coding language, you can get into the other one. It's no big deal.
Let's get a little bit more into that. What tips do you have for people that are just starting out in this field in terms of finding a job?
The first thing is, when they start and they get the education, that they start and document their journey, they document what they have learned. That's one of the big things that people very often don't do. Even students in my academy, although I tell them a lot, like, here's a template for your GitHub repo, and for every course that you do, write that down, take my source code that I provide, add your details, add your documentation to it. What have you learned? What was the problems? How did you do this differently? And this, if you have this and if you create this portfolio, then you can share this with people. And also when you then apply, you can actually talk about this, and you have something where maybe an interviewer asks you about this, because they think, let's see if this person actually did this. And then you have something, and then you can start. Or you can say, if you don't know something, you can maybe, or very often you can then relate this to something that you have already done and that you have documented. And you can say, here, I already worked with a similar tool and did this and that. So that is one of the big things. I would say, if you, and that's not a scientific number, but if you start, document your journey, document what you have learned, you're ahead of 90% of the people.
What I would like to add to that from a recruiter perspective, because I coach a lot of data engineers as well, and also people who are just trying to find a job and they're struggling. Actually, I'm teaching a class on Monday to new data engineers, new professionals in data that come from a different field, and they are now getting into the market and how to find a job. The biggest problem for them is that they will not be invited to the job interview. And once you get there, of course, you can show your portfolio. But I would say, don't just have your portfolio in GitHub, because nobody clicks on your GitHub link in your CV. Really try to put this experience also in your work experience. Put the projects there, make it very visible. Most people just try to write all of their complete work life in the resume, and I'm telling you, don't do that. Just put the relevant things there, because the manager is only trying to solve a certain problem, and you need to be the person to do that. He doesn't want to read about everything else. That's distracting. So put your project, everything that you did that's relevant from the past, from past project, put it there, and then you have a bigger chance of actually getting invited.
Yeah. If you make a section, that's actually a good point. If you make a section like personal projects, and then have 3 of them there.
Yeah. Or 4,
whatever. It depends on how much you already.
It should be relevant, and I think the people who know themselves know best what is relevant. But they should ask the question every time when they look at the job profile, or they call to the recruiter and ask, "What are you actually looking for? What is relevant?" And then look at your resume. Are those things there or not? Now we're gonna really get into the topic of today. How does a typical day of a data engineer look like, and what do they spend most of their time on?
I can only say how it was for me. For me, the first thing that I always, when I started, was looking at the monitoring, looking at the dashboards, if everything is running, if we had some problems overnight, for instance. That was always the first thing. And if there was nothing really to do, then I got into the development part. Or if there were issues, then you're going to start fixing these issues, start debugging, going through the problems, talking to your colleagues.
How often were there issues? Would you say that depends on the quality of the data engineer, or there's so many points that can influence that?
It always depends on how complex is the platform actually. How many different jobs do you have in there running, or different projects you have running. The data quality is also an issue. Now the data that where you're getting the platform where you're getting the data, let's say you're working with an API, it works 1 week, the next day they change something on the other side.
Yeah.
You have no influence in that, and then you find a broken pipeline. I'm like, okay, let's start.
An update somewhere, software
update.
Yeah.
Let's start figuring out what is wrong and who to contact, and like these are typical things that you have to struggle with. So that's the fun.
This comes a little bit into my next question, because the problem of the data engineer in the daily life, but what are the problems? What is the biggest challenges that they are facing? Is it this?
Very often, well, you have to look at this from a perspective. There are 4 general areas in data engineering. There's the planning, like before you even start developing. Okay, what do we want to do? What are the KPIs for this? Then you start the design of your platform or of your pipelines. And then you get into the implementation, and then you have the operations. Right? So in these 4 areas, they're usually where you're going to have problems all the time. And you always have projects that are in one of these 4 phases. You will never get everything into operations and then, okay, that's it. Let's just keep it running. Yeah, very often with planning the overall thing is always communication. That's something where we engineers struggle a lot with. That when you think of it, on one side you have, for instance, the data scientists sitting. They have some challenges. Then you have project management or product management. They want their product to be done. They have some things in their head that you need to then support or solve for them. So, and then the engineers themselves, there's always this communication part. that is important.
So the biggest problem is communication?
Very often, yes, because this
Give an example. Let's say that maybe it
like
gets a little bit more
the
tangible.
the topic is that, let's say, product management has some requirements, and these requirements need to be well communicated to the engineers, and then very often the engineers have to then ask back, okay, what exactly does that mean? Then you have the topic of something is missing, product management doesn't tell you, or it comes up after some time and then messes everything up again.
Yeah.
So this, and we're still just in the planning phase, right? So this type of, okay, now we're sitting together, we're trying to communicate in a way that is not too technical, because we engineers tend to make stuff very technical very quickly, so that people that are not that familiar with our terms don't know what we're talking about. And on the other side as well, like product management, they have some ideas, some terms, or a language, let's say, where the engineers are not that into sometimes. So that's something.
Yeah, to understand what the other party is talking about, and also to maybe understand what is the real problem that they're trying to solve. Sometimes I also heard another data engineer I interviewed in another podcast. He said, well, one of my biggest problems is not asking enough questions, and sometimes I would spend so much time on one function that later on turned out to be really not that important, and I spent very little time on something that was the key element of what they needed. So I guess that's something every data engineer should consider. Really check questions, check in between, even if you think you know what they're saying, ask it back in a different way,
and really figure out what's the main challenge. Right? Because if you ask people and they have something in their mind with 1,000 features, and they're going to load this onto you, but is this really everything that you need? Is this really everything that needs to be done right now in the beginning, where we're just building the proof of concept and so on? And then can we agree on this is the cutoff date now? We're not adding new stuff to it. We're just we're building this. Because that's something that happens very often. Everything's communicated, the KPIs are set, the engineers start working, and then 3 weeks in, okay, there's something completely new, something super important that needs to be added, and then how can we do this?
3 weeks is still a short time. We used to have in IT projects that would you would give some requirements at the beginning of the year, and at the end of the year you would see it back. But of course, the more agile way of working is more more feedback from the client in the meantime. Does this also apply to data engineering, do you think? Do they work Scrum? Do they work in teams, or is it more solo?
Well, usually it's in teams. I never really liked Scrum. Yes, you work in an agile environment, but I always felt like Scrum is used or is very helpful in larger teams. If you have smaller teams, smaller engineering teams of 3, 4, 5 people, I'm not the super fan of it. But that's usually the setting. You work in a small team because, let's say, you have a use case, something for data analysts. They want to have some analytics functionality of a part of a project of the company, where you have to get the data that is in a day-to-day environment, get that out throughout the day, and then give this to them in a data warehouse where they can use their BI tool.
Let me get a little bit into senior data engineers or experienced data engineers. They run into problems from day to day. One, definitely communication.
Yeah.
What do you think right now is something that every data engineer should do to remedy the biggest challenges of data engineers? What can they do?
A problem is sometimes we engineers, we then try to fix stuff ourselves. I think you already hinted this. In the agile environment, it is very important to quickly get someone in the discussion and try to figure out, okay, how can we solve this together? That also fits to how do we work? Yes, we work in a team, but very often parts of this are developed by one person, right?
Yeah.
You have a larger platform. There are certain pipelines where one of the engineers is responsible for and then does that. That's the communication. Sometimes it's not as easy, because another problem is where, like I hinted with the API, where something external changes, where you have no direct involvement with, where you need to have clear documentation. Who is responsible for this on the other side? Who can you contact? Sometimes it's not that easy to actually do that.
especially in larger environments. People leave. It would be a shame if you're really relying on one guy that knows how everything works and how everything fits together. And if he leaves, the rest of the data engineers just have to really reinvent the wheel. And usually the documentation, that is a problem. Would you say that that's also a skill that more data engineers should develop, or you don't see that going wrong oftenly?
The engineers that I have been working with are usually very good at, or were very good at documentation. I was always more the person of inline documentation, so that once you see the code, you understand what it's all about. Because documentation is, and I mean, that's a typical software development problem. Documentation is always the thing that at the end tends to fall off the edge because there's no time for it anymore. So you need to start packaging in as much as possible right in the development.
Yeah, it should be part of the day, actually, not at the end. Well, we're kind of running out of time. I would like to jump through the questions and maybe jump to this question. What is the key lesson for you as a seasoned data engineer that you can that you had and that you can share with us?
So for me, the key lesson was always to be curious, to try to learn something new. And the cool thing is, in this job, in this profession, you can do this on your own. Most tools are open source, or if you're interested in a cloud platform, these are so cheap to learn because you're not starting with these huge installations, with these huge data sets. There's a lot of possibility for you to improve yourself and to learn new stuff and stay on the ball, because also new stuff is coming out all the time.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest skill.
Yeah, that's one of the key lessons for me. Like, stay curious, learn new stuff. The industry is going to turn. Like, when I started, Hadoop was the thing. So if I would have been staying with Hadoop, who's using that anymore? Like,
no, yeah. So keep adapting to the new technologies that are coming out. That's the main skill, I would say, in most of the technology jobs, but specifically in data. Talking about learning, I want to get, as a final question, a little bit into your academy. By the way, for the people still listening right now, you must be interested. Don't forget to subscribe. If you're still here, subscribe. Don't forget about it. How does your academy help data engineers?
Well, for my academy, I started this first. As I said, at first I did coaching with individual students, and from there I figured out, okay, there are certain things that people should look at and then go through. And right now the academy has over 30 courses and over 50 hours of video lessons with code, from basically where you have everything from the basics with working with Docker, working with Python, transforming or processing data with Python, then fundamentals like platform design or database design, relational database design. Now we're coming out with a new course for dimensional database design. Then individual tools that engineers use all the time, and we basically have the things that people need, like Snowflake or Spark and Kafka, so you can build streaming pipelines and full projects, end-to-end projects on the cloud or with these open source tools. And that's, for me, always very important, that people understand, okay, there are analytical use cases, there are transactional use cases, there are these certain tools that you need. And if you know a platform, if you know how to build a stream and a batch pipeline on this, and then you're already very, very good.
So the academy is a very practical approach as well, with case studies, examples. And would you say it's not only for juniors, right? It's also for more experienced data engineers.
Yeah, I have all kinds of people in there. I have data scientists. I have also professional data engineers who, like I said, want to learn something new, but they don't want to spend the time of figuring out how to set it up, figuring out how to get into it. But I have like a 2-hour course, hands-on course, how to get it started, how to learn the basics, and then they can progress from there and maybe use that in their job. That's the.
Thank you so much. Is there anything, a last thing that you need to share or want to share?
Oh, all good. I'm very happy to be here. Vincent, was a great podcast. I think it's a good thing that you talk to a lot of people, and that a lot of people are able to share their knowledge.
Well, I have to see how many people we will see, but I think this is a great topic. I learned new things again. I keep talking every week in, week out about data engineering, and every week I learn new stuff. It's amazing, and I think you have a very good look on it. So thank you so much again, Andreas, and all the best with everything you're building. I hope more people will go to your academy and that you will teach so much more new data engineers and experienced data engineers.
Thanks.